Hello, and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin English, founder of The Silver Edge. Our mission at The Silver Edge is to inspire men and women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond to live their strongest, healthiest, most fulfilling lives. In this podcast, we share stories of amazing individuals who are doing just that, to help motivate you to become the healthiest version of yourself, regardless of your age. And now, on to today's podcast. Hello, my guest today is Keelie Wright. Keelie is a 60-year-old practicing acrobat. Keelie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. So I certainly want to talk to you about what it means to be a 60-year-old acrobat, but let's back up a little bit. And why don't you tell me a little bit about your youth? What were you like as a child? Were you active into gymnastics at that time?
Yes, actually, I started acrobating when I was 3.
Oh, wow.
At a dance studio. My mom had a best friend that she went to high school with who opened up a dance studio. So my sister started taking class there. And when I saw a little girl doing somersaults on the mat, I said, "Mommy, I can do that." And she said, "Well, go do that." And that's kind of what started it. And it was a neat thing because they were friends. So I had private lessons in everything, jazz, ballet, tap, acro, But the big thing that my dance teacher did was she was a performer, and she always created places for us to perform. And when I started acrobating, they realized I was very flexible, and I was, so I was a contortionist. I was a natural kind of contortionist, which you didn't see a lot then. But my dance teacher used to do shows in like Elks Clubs and the American Legions and stuff. And so she started bringing me along for a costume change. So they called me the littlest belly dancer in the world. From like age 3 to 5, I used to go out and I do a little belly dance contortion act and fill in the spot for her. And then I just grew up in that studio, and she had us perform everywhere. And I always did some sort of acrobatic solo. My mom was very creative. She always wanted to dance, wasn't able to. So when she had me, she would come up with an idea like, I want my daughter to be an Easter bunny and dance to Easter parade. And my dad was a carpenter. And she would say, "Make her a prop that looks like an Easter basket." And so we'd come up with this crazy prop that have a plank on the top, and I do acrobatics on the handle. And my dance teacher was a really creative choreographer. So every year I had some sort of crazy different routine. And even to one time I was a lion, and I had like a plank, and then there was a round table behind it, and my dad hooked up lights and a motor, and I would hit the motor halfway through and it would spin. And I just performed in town. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So we would go to malls, we would go to old folks' homes. We just, went everywhere and performed. So that was kind of my background with performing. And then when I hit about 9 or 10, I got into gymnastics, which really straightened, made you stronger, learned how to straighten my legs and point my toes. And I just did both of those. I used to say I danced and acrobated 8 days a week because I would do gymnastics at a club. I did gymnastics at our high school. I would dance a number of times a week. I had a contortion teacher that was an hour drive away. We would drive an hour once a week to go see her. And it was just always fun. It was always something super fun for me and just kept me busy all the time. When I graduated high school, I ended up going to Point Park for a little bit, majoring in theater and dance. And I met a fellow there who was into musical theater. And my mom said, "You guys are great. I'm going to produce a show. We're going to put you on the road." So we put together this crazy little show band, and we traveled Eastern United States. And I would, I'm not much of a singer, but I would do some backup singing, and we had routines we choreographed. And my mom made all the costumes. She always made all my costumes. And I did that for a couple of years, but I always got to perform my solo. I'd always do some sort of acrobatic solo. And I envisioned being able to come to Vegas and do an act, which once that show kind of, ran out of steam, I moved to Vegas. We had a friend who let me stay in his place, and I ended up working at the being an acrobat at the Follies Bergère here.
Oh,
Just
wow.
just kind of, my first week here, my mom was still here. We were just getting set up, and we went to see the show. And I was just walking around, started talking to a security guard. I was like, "Yeah, I want to be in this show." And he's like, "Well, I know somebody. Come on, let's go." And he took me backstage, and somebody happened to be leaving on maternity leave, and there was a spot that opened up. So I got, and that's what brought me to Vegas, and I'm in Las Vegas now. So I worked in that show just for a few years and fell in love. And he had family in California. We moved to California, and I tried to pursue this career in California, but LA is you really got to be something, you've got to have it all. I love to perform. I was a great acrobat. I don't like to hustle. I do it for fun. And I just, had a hard time getting out there and fighting through. So we ended up, I kind of got out of the business for the most part. And I had a little boy, and he wasn't into gymnastics or anything at all. So I became, a sports mom. He did baseball and football, but I was always the mom at the at the games who was teaching the other kids how to do tricks. I just always loved acrobatics. And then to make extra money at that time, I started doing clowning, and I was doing birthday parties, and I had a little box I would pop out of and do a little acrobatic routine. And then I learned how to do balloons and paint faces and stuff. But that was kind of a side job. And then when like 7 years later, I had a 7-year itch, and I want a little girl. So then when I had my daughter, I thought, well, yeah, we need to get into a dance studio. And I ended up getting divorced, unfortunately, then. And I found a dance studio that would let me bring her to, my classes. And I started teaching acrobatics there. And I've been doing that for over 20 years now at that studio. So, and my daughter grew up in the studio, so she kind of, did the same thing, and I taught her acrobatics. And I've done a lot of different things in the meantime to stay healthy. I went through the aerobics, through the step classes, through playing volleyball, through just, and I tell people I've been in and out of shape every decade, because it's just hard to maintain, when you have kids. And my daughter got into everything. My son, you don't have the time, you squeeze in 15 minutes here or just whatever you can. Um, but I guess that kind of brings me up to current, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So with her growing up in the studio, she decided, you know, we have a really good arts high school here. They have to audition for, and she got into that arts high school, and she developed these ridiculous long legs. And so she really got into it, and she thought, oh, I like this. And she was an acrobat because I taught her the acrobatics. And she says, maybe I should learn some sort of aerial to kind of go along with what I know how to do now. And it was I had heard that you had silks classes at like one of the gymnastic studios or something here. And we went online and started looking. And we found this place called Shine Alternative Fitness that had been open for 6 months, that had aerial and contortion and flexibility classes and stuff. And so she wanted to go take a flexibility class. And we went there, and I had to kind of wait in the waiting room. But while I'm waiting, I can see this silks class going on. And I'm watching, and I'm thinking, these women aren't professionals, and the idea of this studio is it's an alternative fitness. It's something to make you strong. And if you like kind of doing something different, this is an alternative. And I've never had anything that done anything that makes you strong like aerial does. It's especially upper body and core and stuff. It's just crazy the amount of strength that takes. But so I
Yeah,
watched the class.
let me interrupt you there. Just I want to make sure I'm on the same page and our listeners are. When you say aerial, can you kind of define that for those of us that aren't familiar with that term?
Absolutely, absolutely. I guess Well, what you see in Cirque du Soleil now, anything that goes up in the air is gonna be aerial, basically. And there's aerial silks, which are like the ribbons, the long flowing ribbons, and then there's aerial hoop, which is just a metal hoop that you can go up on. Those are pretty much the 2 that I do. They have a rope, so then it's just a single rope, and they have, nowadays anything that goes up in the air, bungees and whatnot. So this particular studio, they have to rig the points up, and at the time it had 4 points. So they could hang 4 silks, and you go in and take a class for an hour, and you have an instructor. And the instructor, he's still just a good friend of mine. He was the best. He was super outgoing. And when I was sitting there watching, when that first class was over, he says, "You should come back next time and do it." And I was like, I'm going to come back next time and do it. And I fell in love. And that was about 8 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I was going to ask when you started. So that was about 8 years
yeah,
ago.
so
Okay.
yeah, I was 52. Yeah. So when I first started, I couldn't climb the silks, and I'd been doing some rock climbing, I'd been doing some bouldering. I thought I was pretty strong, but you use different muscles every time you do something different. And it took me about 3 lessons before I could actually climb up without help and go halfway up and down. But it's an interesting sport because you you kind of fail at something every time you go, but you achieve something every time you go. So there's this real, you're always trying to work to get this trick, and you usually don't get it the first time, but you improve on it and you soon will get it.
So when you're starting out with something like silks, obviously you're starting pretty basic, right? As you
Yeah.
mentioned, you didn't even have the strength really to climb the entire length of it. But having looked at your Instagram and watching some of your, I think you call them falls or where you cut where
Drops. Yeah,
yeah,
drops.
drops. That's what it is, not falls.
Yeah,
Drops
I
where
do fall.
you're twisted in this thing, and you come and
Yeah.
it kind of looks sort of convoluted, and you come flying down in this heart dropping moment and
Right.
unfurl. What is that process like of learning to? I mean, that looks like a pretty, I would say, an advanced
An
kind of
advanced
move.
trick. Yes.
How do they incorporate safety and learning this as you're beginning?
Well, you progress slowly, and I remember at the you do they teach you to climb, they teach you the basics first, and then your arms pump out really, really fast, because you just it's they call it like a ice cream cone grip. This grip is an unusual grip, and it just, it wears out your forearms really fast. And so halfway through the class, usually, when you're beginning, they'll tie it in a knot. And then you have kind of a hammock. So you can do tricks on a hammock, and it releases your hands a little bit so you don't have all your weight hanging from your hands. And I remember the first time I got to do kind of a scary trick, and my coach was like, "Do you want to do something scary?" And I Yes, I do. And so he shows me there's a way you can lay in that hammock and climb on up, and then you do a little flip forward and catch yourself with your arms out, and that's your very first, little drop that you've learned. And it wasn't super dangerous. Although my coach always used to, he always threatens us, and he tells us, if you let go of that silk here, you're gonna die. So don't do it.
Okay.
Hang on to that. So they definitely impress upon you, when you're all wrapped up, you still have to have tension on something so that after the drop, it doesn't just slither out, you know. But you progress slowly, and you learn tricks as you go, and every trick leads to another trick, and you after a while, you're just strong enough to do most of them. Some of, well, no, I shouldn't say strong enough to do most of them. No, there's a lot of them that I won't do. There's some crazy tricks that you can do with big drops. And strangely enough, I ended up with a case of vertigo for a while. About 2 years, I was fighting vertigo and trying to do aerial and acrobatics. So you can work through anything.
So you found this class at what do we say? You were 52 years old, and this was a class of adults, right? So you're in
Yes,
with other adults,
other
and
adults.
you have this opportunity to do something that you've obviously been active your entire life, and this appeal to you, something you're passionate about. And you found that there's this class just happened to be there, and you're still active in that class today. Is that right?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So yeah, they struggled to keep it going for a while, but it's doing really well. And now there's other studios that have opened up, and across the country there's places where you can go do this just about any city that you're in. I've taken classes at other places too. And just the most ordinary people come in. Recently, we had 3 school teachers that started coming, and they've never done anything like this. This wasn't. They've never been an acrobat. They don't know how. They're not flexible. But for some reason, they found this passion, and they come and they laugh every week, and they're so much fun. And they get better, and they get stronger, and they just automatically start dropping weight, and their confidence builds. And I just love watching the people come in. Of course, a lot of people have come and gone. Most aren't crazy acrobats like me, but I've just fallen in love with it. It's my favorite form of exercise. It makes me.
Well, I think that's important. Yeah, that you bring up that there are people that come in there who might not be comfortable in a conventional gym, say a Globo gym with the weight equipment and machines, etc. But they find something like this, and it can be fun. And I think we can all agree that it can be very physically demanding. Like you
Yeah.
said, these people are building strength, they're building confidence, and building conditioning. So yeah, that's fabulous. It's an alternative form of exercise, but it certainly looks very strenuous. So for folks out there listening, and I'll put this in the show notes, you'll definitely want to go over and take a look at Keelie's Instagram posts. She's got some great posts of doing what we've been referring to as these drops, where she gets up high in these silks and she's all wrapped up and comes down with this heart-dropping, quick spinning. You'll just have to see it. But yeah, I can see how that could be addicting. Okay, so we talked, obviously you've been active your whole life. You're still active now, and I think that's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about your nutrition. How do you eat these days, and how has that evolved maybe over time?
Okay. Well, that has definitely evolved over time, but it's something that I've battled my whole life, as a dancer, as an acrobat, as working in Las Vegas in a show. I get weight notices every week. It's just always a battle to maintain weight. Unfortunately, growing up, my eating habits were bad. Even though I was trying to lose weight, it was not through healthy eating. But as I got older, you learn more information is out there, and I eat fairly well. I try real hard to eat vegetables, to eat clean, I do eat meat, but my downfall are sweets. I like sugar. I just can't seem to go a day without sugar. I can do really pretty good with everything else, but I just try to do everything in moderation. I just try to do everything in moderation. It's always kind of my goal with life.
Yeah, so it sounds like eating primarily whole foods. Sounds like not a whole
Yeah.
lot of processed foods.
No, not a lot of processed foods. No, whole
Yeah.
grains, vegetables. And I'll tell you, here we are home again. There's a lot of cooking going on. And unfortunately, I don't necessarily enjoy cooking. And on a normal basis, when I'm working a full-time job, I'm working a part-time job, I'm going to work out. It's really difficult to fit it in. I think I found that more snacking than big meals seems to work best for me, especially when I'm busy. I like to just eat a little throughout the day. I try not to eat late. That usually seems, but yeah, it's always on my mind. It's something I'm always concentrating on. The weight kind of always fluctuates a little. I always wish I were 10 or 20 pounds lighter, but healthy is the goal really. So and movement. I would just want to be able to keep moving.
Both of those things, I think the healthy movement and the healthy nutrition are journeys. They're not destinations, right? I think for most people, most of us, they're constantly evolving, and
Constantly,
it's a
yes.
path. Yeah.
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 And as you make little changes, they become, permanent. And then
Right.
you can work on the next one. And then all of a sudden here I am, geez, my eating now to 20 years ago is completely different.
Well, let's talk a little bit about recovery, I think you mentioned that you're working out 4 or 5 days a week. What are your thoughts, especially, as for folks that are aging, on recovery and how sleep might play into that?
Well, yeah, I just feel like you have to listen to your body. I work out if I don't know, it's a tough one. You just have to, I just kind of go with how I feel. And if I'm super sore, sometimes I feel like I need to take a day off. Sometimes you're really tired. And if you go work out, all of a sudden you feel fabulous and the soreness goes away. So you just have to kind of feel it out. And I don't have, I seem to be fine with sleep. I wake up and go pee in the middle of the night all the time. But other than that, I sleep pretty well. I think because I work out, and eat good, I sleep really well. If I eat something bad or too close to bedtime, then that affects my sleep. So, it's best not to eat too late for me. And I just try I'm the worst at getting massages or taking time to care for things, even icing my elbows or something. I'm just terrible at it for some reason. I don't know. I do find that rolling, I've got one of those foam rollers, and those seem to work if my back's really sore. I used to I used to hang from inversion tables, and since I started doing silks, I don't have to do that. It's kind of
That's
amazing,
kind of built
and I
in,
can
right?
tell when I'm not doing that because when I teach, I kind of, I do a lot of lifting. I'm spotting kids, and I usually come out of teaching with my back hurting. So I used to come and hang from that inversion table, but now, as long as I can continually doing silks, it just seems to stretch your body out naturally, and so that works out really well. Stretching is good. Stretching's really
Stretching, I'm
important.
sure, especially with what you're doing. You say when you're teaching, are you teaching acrobatics and silks and aerials and?
So not the acrobatic or not the silks. I teach acrobatics. I call it acrobatics because it's at a dance studio. It's on just plain mats. So it's not a gymnastics. It's not tumbling. But I just teach tricks. I have all these little tricks that I learned growing up. And my boyfriend's a stagehand. So my mom would get my dad to build me props. I get my boyfriend to build me props. And I have little tables that he's built, and they can do little balances things. And they do a recital every year, and I put together a dance with them every year that they can do with their acrobatics. So yeah, that's kind of my passion. That's my creativity.
Right.
You're working with the kids and teaching them. Yeah, yeah, I love that a lot.
Well, I've seen on some of your posts, I mean, in addition to being very incredible with your silks and having fun with the hoops, if I'm not mistaken, I think you call it an aerial. Is that
Oh,
a
my
cartwheel
Ariel,
with no
yes,
hands?
yes,
Right? Is that what that is?
yes.
Yeah. So I've seen you doing that. I've seen you do, I think, back
The back
handsprings. Right?
handsprings, yes.
Yeah. So that's legitimate. I mean, you've got some serious gymnastic moves still.
Yeah, it's crazy because the muscle memory is there, and my mind remembers how to do it. I've probably done thousands of aerials in my life, but the strength is what needs to be there. And doing aerial, silks and whatnot builds upper body, does not build
Ah,
legs. So I've lost a lot of my leg strength. So to do an aerial, you have to have that leg strength. And I used to dance. I used to take dance classes here all the time. And we'd go across the floor and we'd do a little chalet cartwheel, and I'd do a chalet aerial. So I kept up those areas for a while. But then I quit doing the dancing and doing the aerial, and I just lost a lot of the leg strength. So yeah, I had to work real hard. There's a little acrobatic class that they teach there. And the aerial is it's like some days everything feels good enough that I can land it. And most days I can't quite get the height. I can't quite get the push. Now the back handsprings, I guess it's similar because you need the leg strength to jump, but I've got great upper body strength. So as long as I can jump, I can pull that off. And I've been yeah, every few years or so, I throw a back handspring somewhere just to see if I can still do it. So I'm thrilled. Years ago, my goal was to still be able to walk on my hands at 50. So I guess I well surpassed that,
I'd say so.
surprisingly enough. Yeah. So I'm thrilled. Yeah. But those are tricks I did a million times throughout my life. And yeah, when I'm, taking that acrobatic class, if the body's feeling good, if the wrists are feeling good, I can still do. Or if I'm just trying to show off, then the adrenaline gets it and I can still do it.
Nice. Well, what's next for you? You've obviously accomplished a lot, and you're very fit for any age. Do you have? Are there things that you looking forward to, or that you're working on?
Well, I recently started taking Pilates on the reformer Pilates. I'd never done that before. And I really like that. I think it's a nice cross training. It's, nothing on the joints. And I'll retire at 65 is the plan. So I started thinking, maybe I will, get certified in teaching Pilates. And so then when I retire, I could just substitute. They seem to always need subs around. And I'd like to continue teaching as long as I can. So we'll play that by ear and see how that works out. Um, Other than that, I'm really spoiled by not working right now. I'm really looking forward to retirement and just being able to do whatever exercise I feel like every day. This is unfortunately such a strange time for us with this coronavirus and a lot of uh, sadness, but it's definitely been a break for me. My life has just been hectic for so long, it seems like. So I got a taste of what it'll be like to be retired, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. And I don't know, I play around with the Instagram. I gain a few followers here and there. It's fun to post videos. I like doing that. It's just a way for me to perform, I guess. So no, I just like to have fun and enjoy life.
Great, and no signs of slowing down then, right?
No, no signs of slowing down. My coach, he was living in my original coach. He was living in Hawaii for a while and was teaching at a studio there. And he had a student he was giving private lessons to who is 72. This
Fantastic.
little tiny lady, and she was doing great stuff. I mean, really good things. So I looked at him, I said, okay, good. I can do this when I'm in my 70s then. So I guess that's the next goal to
There
see
you
if I
go.
can make 70-year-old acrobat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what advice would you have for somebody who does not maybe have the background that you have? Because clearly you've got the perfect background for where you ended up being sitting that day in that silks class. But
Right.
what advice would you have for somebody, maybe a woman in her 50s and 60s, or a man for that matter, who's listening to this or stumbles on your Instagram and says, "Wow, that really looks like fun." What advice would you have for somebody for getting started?
Well, find a studio and you just have to kind of be brave. You just have to, be gutsy and try something new. They really, usually if you wanted to start something like this with the silks, they have intro classes, which is just kind of a basic intro. At our studio, it's a basic intro of all the aerials. So you get to do a little on the hoop, a little on the silk. Sometimes they'll hang some rings or a rope or something and you get a little taste of it all. And they require that you do that class for a while until you have your basics. You have to learn basic locks and build up the strength and be able to lift your feet over your head. And believe me, they tell you when you go in there and you think about the idea of hanging and pulling your feet over your head, it sounds really unattainable. And they will tell you, just if you can hook a toe, you know get a toe up there. Whatever you do, it's building strength towards the next step. When you get one toe up, all of a sudden you can get both feet up and you can pull yourself up with your feet overhead. It's all a step at a time. If it's fun, then it's not like working out. you know and if you always wanted to be an acrobat, always wanted to be gymnastics, it's a really good way to get started. It's hard, so don't they make it look very easy, so don't be fooled, and you'll be surprised the first time at how quickly your hands wear out and how pathetic you think you are because you don't have any strength, to do this type of thing. But if you have a good studio, they break everything down. You can you they have what do they call it? Aerial yoga now, which really anybody can do that because it's a hammock So when you're in the hammock, you're supported. You can invert and you're supported. And those instructors, they have to go through a certification process, and they're very, very good at taking you one step at a time. And all of a sudden you've done some sort of cool little flip, that you didn't think was possible at all. And that's a really good way to start to work your way up to something aerial, also that aerial yoga. We have an aerial yoga studio there too. So it's different and it's a lot of fun. The strangest thing is, for some reason, I get swing sick. I get motion sick. I've done hundreds of back handsprings and flips and stuff, but you put me in a swing and it makes me nauseous. And that aerial hammock has a swing to it and it makes me nauseous.
Just don't like that, huh?
So no, I cannot do hammock. I keep trying, but yeah, I'm like, oh. The other ones don't make me swing sick.
So anybody out there listening, it sounds like first step is really just find a studio and walk in there and
Yeah,
see if it's for you.
they'll
I
show
love
you
it.
around. They'll have a basic class and you can try it.
Great. Well, you certainly are an inspiration. You look great, and obviously you're in great shape. So where would you like people to connect with you? I found you on Instagram. Is that the best place for people to find you?
Yes, 60-year-old acrobat.
And that's the number 60YROLD Acrobat. And I'll throw that in the show notes as well, so folks can connect with you there. Well, Keelie, thanks so much for being on the show, and best of luck with all of your future endeavors.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks. I really appreciate you inviting me. This was fun.
Well, that's our show for today, folks. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends and please consider subscribing and giving us a 5-star review. All the show notes and much more are available at our website at silver-edge.com. That's silver-edge.com. So until next time, stay strong.